Welcome to the DX Today Expert Report. Today we're diving into a massive shift in the consumer packaged goods industry. We aren't just talking about chatbots or generating marketing copy anymore. We are looking at the transition from generative AI to agentic AI, systems that don't just talk but actually act.
It is a critical distinction to make right off the bat. If 2023 and 2024 were defined by exploration, figuring out what generative AI could create, 2025 is marking the dawn of autonomy.
We are moving from passive copilots to active agents that can reason, plan, and execute workflows with very little human intervention. That word, agency, is the key here. But before we get into the winners and losers, let's define the terms. How does an AI agent differ from the tools we've been using for the last 2 years?
The best way to visualize this is through the old supply chain problem of the bullwhip effect, where small demand changes cause chaos upstream. It gave you a heads up. Then came generative AI.
Right, but you still had to send the email, update the ERP, and move the stock yourself.
Exactly. Agentic AI changes the equation. It perceives the environment. Maybe it sees a heat wave coming via weather APIs and checks your ERP stock levels. And then, crucially, it acts. It executes tools to solve the problem, like automatically placing a rush order for milk or adjusting truck routes. It closes the loop.
So we are essentially looking at 3 tiers of maturity here. Tier 1 is predictive, looking at the past and future. Tier 2 is generative, creating content.
And Tier 3 is agentic, taking action. That is the hierarchy. And honestly, the industry has been waiting for this because the previous eras left too much manual work on the table. We went from rules-based automation in the 90s, which was rigid, to machine learning in the 2010s, which was great at forecasting but couldn't do anything about it. Now, by coupling large language models with action frameworks, things that can read APIs and query databases, we are finally seeing digital transformation that actually transforms operations.
Let's talk about the market drivers.
It is a mix of both, but the economic pressure is the real catalyst. Margins in CPG are notoriously thin. Rising raw material costs mean you need hyper-efficiency that human planners just cannot achieve manually. Then you have the consumer side. Everyone wants hyper-personalization. You can't deliver segment of one marketing to millions of people without autonomous decision-making.
And the report mentions labor shortages as well, particularly in manufacturing and logistics.
Correct. We aren't just automating to cut costs. In some cases, we are automating because the staff simply isn't there to do the planning and dispatching.
I want to get under the hood for a minute. For our technical listeners, how is this actually built? It's obviously more complex than just a GPT interface.
Much more complex. You have to look at the cognitive loop. It typically follows a perception, reasoning, action cycle. First, perception.
The agent ingests real-time data from IoT sensors on the factory floor, social media sentiment, or stock levels. Second is memory. It uses vector databases to recall context, like remembering that the last time we discounted a product during a storm, margins dropped. That memory piece seems vital so it doesn't make the same mistake twice.
It is essential. Then comes reasoning. The LLM acts as the brain, planning a sequence of steps. It might say, check supplier lead time. If it's under 2 days, order now. And finally, action.
The report also triggers an AI call to SAP or Oracle to actually create the purchase order. The report also discusses multi-agent systems. It's not just one superbot running the company, right?
No, that would be unmanageable. The dominant design pattern we are seeing is the orchestrator-worker model. You have a manager agent that delegates. So if you want to launch a summer campaign, the manager tells a creative agent to generate assets, a supply agent to check inventory, and a legal agent to review everything for FDA compliance. They collaborate.
Let's move to the real world. Who is actually doing this?
There are a few standouts. Kraft Heinz is a major one. It's essentially a control tower with agentic capabilities. They aren't just doing monthly planning cycles anymore. They are doing daily, real-time adjustments.
The numbers in the report are impressive. A 12% increase in pickle production efficiency just by automating line adjustments.
And a 22% reduction in product development time. That is the difference between being reactive and proactive. Nestlé is another great example.
They are using AI and R&D to simulate millions of product recipes. They can balance taste, nutrition, cost, and sustainability metrics all at once to find the perfect formulation for a plant-based product.
And on the creative side, Coca-Cola seems to be leading the pack.
Coca-Cola is interesting because they are using it for both engagement and operations. Their Create Real Magic campaign let consumers use AI to generate art, which created huge engagement. But on the back end, their freestyle machines act as distributed sensor agents.
If people start mixing Sprite with cherry and vanilla, the data is autonomously analyzed, and that can trigger a new product launch without ever running a focus group.
It sounds like a utopia of efficiency, but we have to talk about the risks.
The biggest headache is the legacy integration nightmare. You have these cutting-edge AI agents trying to talk to 20-year-old instances of SAP. If you don't have the right middleware, it doesn't work.
When a chatbot makes things up in a conversation, it's embarrassing. But if a supply chain agent hallucinates, that feels dangerous.
It is incredibly dangerous. If a supply chain agent hallucinates, it might order 50,000 tons of perishable milk to a warehouse that is already full. That is why human-in-the-loop governance is non-negotiable for high-stakes decisions. You cannot just hand over the keys to the factory.
There's also a legal minefield here. The report points out the EU AI Act and antitrust laws in the US.
This is a sleeping giant. If your pricing agent and your competitor's pricing agent are using similar algorithms to set prices, you could accidentally violate the Robinson-Patman Act. You might be breaking antitrust laws without a single human ever talking to a competitor.
That leads nicely into the future outlook. Gartner predicts that by 2028, 33% of enterprise software will embed these agentic capabilities. What does the autonomous enterprise look like in 3 or 4 years?
We are going to see self-healing supply chains. Agents that don't just predict a machine failure, but autonomously schedule the maintenance and reroute production to a different line so you never lose output.
Scientist agents reading academic papers and proposing new molecular structures for flavors overnight. So, for the leaders listening who want to stay ahead of that 33%, what are the strategic recommendations?
First, establish an AI control tower. You need centralized governance to define what decisions an agent is allowed to make. Second, fix your data foundation. Agents are only as good as the data they perceive. If your ERP data is messy, your agent will make messy decisions very fast.
The report mentions a 10-20-70 rule. Can you break that down?
It's a resource allocation rule. Spend 10% on algorithms, 20% on tech infrastructure, and 70% on business process transformation. The bottleneck is rarely the AI. It is the human workflow that refuses to change. That is about compliance. You program the agent to fundamentally refuse actions that would violate those laws, no matter how profitable they might seem.
It's a fascinating shift. We are moving from knowledge to action. And as the report concludes, for companies on razor-thin margins, this isn't just a competitive advantage. It's becoming a survival mechanism.
Absolutely. The winners of the next decade will be the ones who figure out how to transition from just using AI to effectively hiring AI as part of the workforce.
Mike, thank you for breaking this down with us. And to our listeners, that wraps up this edition of the DX Today Expert Report. We'll see you next time.